Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Moody Talk. This is the second in our series about the emotion anger, and I chose anger for the month of January because I figured I'd start off the year with talking about that emotion that a lot of people don't understand. It's a very misunderstood emotion, but valid emotion. And why is that? It's a valid emotion because, as all emotions are, they tell us what is going on, like what is happening and how we need to react to it. So you can feel anger for so many different reasons. A lot of times it's if you've lost something, something's been taken from you that you don't think you deserve to have taken away from you. If there's a threat to you or to loved ones. There's also, if this is a big one for me, boundaries crossed. So there's reasons that we have the emotion, and that anger is really, really something that actually helps us to figure out what's happening instead of trying to stop us in our tracks and just feel big, big emotions. Okay? So last week, I talked about a few things that I usually talk about in the first Moody Talk of the month, and it's descriptive words on the emotion. So we talked about anger and the different descriptive words that we use for it. When we do that, when we write down the ones that we usually use, we know that pop up into our heads when we know we're feeling an emotion, it's great to be able to write those down and then put them on an intensity scale. And the reason for that is because when you start to use the words after you put them on an intensity scale, you realize just how intensely you are feeling that emotion and where you're at in the moment. So I think it's really important to start off that way. And the worksheets are on our site, mymoodymonster.com, as will the other ones. All the other ones that I put together are all on mymoodymonster.com under Moody Talks. So we did that, and then we also talked about body sensations, because when you know how your body reacts when you have an emotion, it's easier to recognize that that is the actual emotion that you're feeling. So this week I'm going into something that I've done before, but is really important, I think, for anger. And what it is called check the facts. And this is a DBT skill that I use a lot. And with checking the facts, I like to talk about primary and secondary emotions. And I think checking the facts is really, really good when you tend to feel a primary emotion but jump to a secondary emotion. And sometimes you do that because it feels safer to feel the other emotion. Other times it may be because you were taught that you're not allowed to feel the primary emotion, so you jump immediately to the other. For example, fear. When I feel fear, I tend to jump immediately to anger. And the reason behind that is that when I was younger, fear was not something that you wanted to show, that you could get hurt, punished, or it would egg on, abusive issues. So I would jump to anger, and that was a more acceptable emotion in my family. So that is why I jump immediately from fear to anger. And I've been working on it, and checking the facts is really, really a great way to be able to work on that, in particular, the primary to secondary emotion. Because ultimately, like I said, emotions teach us and tell us that something's going on. So if you're jumping over your primary emotion, you're not quite understanding exactly why you're feeling that. Okay, so I put together some worksheets for check the facts. I have them right here so we can go through them. So the first question you want to ask is, what happened or will happen? What's the situation here? What's going on? And really combing through that, not just saying, well, this happened. Well, somebody jumped my boundary. It's not as simple as just saying like, oh, well, this happened really quick. It's sitting back and saying, okay, well, what were the steps that happened to create this situation? Okay, sometimes it's how you're feeling in that moment. If you're feeling a certain way and something happens, you could go really quickly into an emotion in a more intense way. Okay. What do I think happened or will happen? So this is good. This goes back to the first one. If you go through and name the things that happened during that time, then you can look at it less emotionally. So when you look at it after with what did I think happened, going back here and really combing through and saying, okay, this actually happened. Okay. Will this really hurt me? So with anger, I think a lot of people, when they're angry, they do feel like they're going to be harmed in some way. So it's that immediate reaction. No, this cannot happen. So asking the question of, will this really hurt me, is a good way to figure out the intensity again. Well, maybe I overreacted because maybe I was feeling a certain way before. And so I overreacted to something. Okay. What is the worst that can happen? So out of the whole situation, what happened? What could happen that would just be the worst thing that could ever happen? And why, is that something to really be fearful of? Does how I feel right now actually fit the situation? So this is the final question in the end, is what I have, going on with my body and the words that I've chosen, is that emotion really what I'm feeling right now? Or am I scared about something like I normally am? Am I scared and that's why I'm angry? So it's a good way to go through and figure it out. Now this is like the step-by-step again, but it breaks it down into questions. So what is the emotion I am feeling? So if you're saying, you're using your descriptive words for anger and you figure it out that you feel angry, right? What happened? What prompted me to feel this emotion? So this goes back to going in and descriptively going through a situation. We all jump the gun a lot. I always jump the gun. Again, another thing I'm working on. And this is what helps me to go through it. So what prompted me to feel this way? So let's pick the boundary was crossed. So somebody crossed my boundary. So check for extremes and judgments. This goes back to when I said, what do I think happened? So checking for extremes and judgments allows you to take an outsider's look, because when you're judgmental of the situation that you're in, and you are saying this really is very, very awful and bad and terrible, using those intense words, sit back and see, if maybe you can dial it back a little and see if there's a less extreme feeling involved in it. If you can take that intensity down a bit. What is my interpretation of the facts? So bing, 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 bing. This is really what's going to get down to the nitty gritty of the situation and the emotion. So what is my interpretation of it? And then you go back, does how I feel right now actually fit with the situation? I promise you guys, it feels like a long process, but it really isn't. It's once you start to work on this and you use it more often, it starts to flow and it can help you within the situation. Sometimes you just get wrapped up in that feeling and kaboom. Whereas if you're able to check the facts, to step back and say, okay, I got to think about this for a minute. If you check the facts and say, okay, so what I'm really feeling right now is scared, and that makes me angry. So what do I do to help myself with that feeling of fear? instead of anger. Okay? Now you can start all the way over again. Okay, so I'm feeling fear. What is the emotion that I'm feeling? Fear. What prompted me to feel this emotion? You go through the situation again. So checking the facts can really help you to cope through a situation without causing an explosion. So I like to use it in that way. So that is checking the facts, my friends. And again, these worksheets will be on my website, www.mymoodymonster.com. And next week we'll be back and we'll talk about a few more coping skills. And if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to put them below. And if you'd like to understand more about DBT, that kind of thing, there are a lot of great resources, but also ask me and I can point you in the right direction. So have a wonderful week, everyone, and I will see you next week. Bye.